Okay, in example 2, we're asked to create the graph of f of x, which has this equation 1/2 x squared minus 3. I want you to be able to realize that that part of the equation is what's telling you the shape of the parabola and the direction of opening. And the only thing that this minus 3 is doing is telling us we have a shift in the graph of 3 units down. If you can realize that, I don't think this is too much of a burden to create the graph of this parabola. So let's start listing out the properties we know. First, we know this one's going to open up because that's a positive 1/2. Second, we know the line of symmetry of this. This is not moved left or right. So we can see that the line of symmetry of this is going to be x equals 0. The vertex of this is going to be 0, since it's shifted down 3, it's going to be 0, negative 3. Fourth, the shape of this is going to be wide. The reason it's wide is because that value of a is between 0 and 1. So we've got all the properties of this, and now what we're going to do is make a table of values just so we can make our sketch a little more accurate. So I'm going to set up my table of values right here. I'll switch to green. I'll put the vertex in the middle like I normally do, 0, negative 3. And now as I start picking points to the right and to the left, I want to realize what's going on here. I'm going to square something and I'm going to take a half of it. Taking a half of even numbers is easy to get, is easier to deal with because we're not going to have any fractional values. So what I'm going to do, instead of going 1, I'm going to go by multiples of 2. The reason I'm going to go by multiples of 2 is if I square an even number, it'll be easy to take half of an even number. So I'm going to go not to 1, I'm going to go to 2, and not to 3, I'm going to go to 4, which tells me I'm going to choose those two because they're evenly spaced on the other side of the line of symmetry. So let's put in our 2. 2 squared is 4. There's that even number I was telling you about. A half of that even number 4 is 2. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. Which tells us this is going to be negative 1, right? Because of the symmetry. Let's put in our 4. 4 squared is 16. That might not be fun to graph, but realize we're taking half of it. A half of 16 is 8. That's a lot easier to deal with on a graph. And then we're taking 3 off of 8, which gets us 5. Which that allows us to quickly determine that that value is also 5. So if you had put in 1 and 3, it'll be okay, it'll still generate points, but then you're going to have fractional amounts. Look, if you put in 1, 1 squared is 1, a half of 1 is a half, 1/2 minus 3, now you're dealing with negative 2.5. And if you can avoid that, I would suggest doing so. If this coefficient had been a third, 1/3 x squared, I wouldn't have jumped by 1s, I wouldn't have jumped by 2s, I would have jumped by multiples of 3, because it's easy to take a third of multiples of 3. If this had been a fourth, I would have considered jumping by 4s. But if you're okay dealing with fractions, you can jump by 1s, 2s, whatever you want to jump by and deal with those fractions. But if you want to try to end up with nice integer values, you can do that as well. Alright, so to set up this graph, I have all of this space. I'm going to put my vertical axis right in the middle. And the reason I'm putting my vertical axis right in the middle is there is no left-right shift, so it makes sense to have the same amount distance to the left and right of that axis. This graph is opening up and it's shifted 3 down. So if I put my axis right in the middle, I'll still have room to go down and then room to go up as well. So I'm going to put that horizontal axis right in the middle. Now, I have to go 4 to the right and 4 to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I could mark that as 4. I'll just mark off every 5th one on the x-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's negative 5. I have to go 5 up and 5 up at least, and 3 down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can now fit this graph on here. So let's plot our points. I like to start with the vertex, 0, -3. There's our vertex. And I like to go to the right, over 2, down 1. And I'm going to use the symmetry to create the other point. So that's down 1, 2 to the right, down 1, 2 to the left. There's the symmetrical point right there. 4 to the right, 5 up, 4 to the right, 5 up. Now if you think about it, that's 4 away from that line of symmetry. So if I go 4 away over here, I'll get that point right there. Maybe I didn't move it far enough. And now I'll sketch my parabola. And there you have it. That's example 2.